Well, ladies and gentlemen, the dust is starting to finally settle on the 2024 election. And we're not just talking about the presidential result, we're talking about the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, there was some drama about the House, maybe a little bit, with potentially Democrats coming back. That was never likely at all. And we did get the Senate result with Kari Lake, unfortunately, barely losing. We're going to talk about that. We're going to update, hopefully, the final vote counts in California. I haven't even checked them this morning, but they're probably not even at 90%. You can see there's no way Trump won Arizona. And by the way, winning Arizona by like 6 points. Pennsylvania by around 2 points. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada, while the Republican candidates for the Senate and the House in those same states lost. Now, what's interesting, when you look at the betting, obviously the betting nailed Trump in terms of him being the president. The live betting was really good. Trump was up all night. His odds only improved as the night went on. But if you look at, by the way, McCormick won in Pennsylvania. But I would imagine maybe they're talking about House races in Pennsylvania. But with Wisconsin, you look at the betting, Hovde was at around 86, 87%. At around 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night on election night, when it was looking like Trump was going to win Wisconsin by around 2 to 3. With the late mail-in dump, Trump only won Wisconsin, I think, by like 0.9. And there were a lot of polls out there that were saying Hovde might perform as well, if not better than Trump. It ended up not happening. You look at Michigan. At a certain point, Mike Rogers was also at around 75, 80% chance to win. He ends up losing. Nevada, Sam Brown was making a run. He ends up losing. Arizona is the big one with Kari Lake, and a lot of people are talking about, Kari Lake, obviously some Republicans did not like the fact that she was in this race. You run any generic Republican, they probably win, but it was Kari Lake, and other people are talking about the allocation of funds by the GOP, Mitch McConnell choosing to spend money on Maryland, of all places, with Larry Hogan. It's a terrible choice. I mean, you're talking about a state that Trump's going to lose by 25 points. You're already up against it. Why are you wasting money there? You've got Arizona, a state Trump carries by 6, and you cannot get the Senate candidate over the line. And part of that is due to poor money allocation by the GOP. But you can see at this point, Donald Trump is maintaining a solid almost 4 million vote lead in terms of just the raw popular vote. We're up to around 72% counted. We are limping to the finish line in California. It is inexcusable how they count votes there. You do have Harris up by around 19, which is around an 8-point or 9-point decrease from what Biden won California in 2020. You do have Oregon with Harris, believe it or not, up by 14. Maybe a little bit surprising in Oregon. A lot of people were wondering maybe Oregon shifts a little bit to the right, possibly within 10 points. And you would think with all the other shifts we've seen throughout the country, they might shift as well. But 88% in, 14-point lead there. And then we're also looking at Washington State with Harris up by almost like the exact same margin as California. Kind of interesting. But, the West Coast is clearly a very, very liberal, and it's not going to be changing. Although California, it does seem like, at least this election, like a lot of states, was at least slightly more conservative. Moving on to the Senate results, you do have Republicans very likely that they're going to be at 53-47. So, I had said 53, 54, maybe 55 on a great night. McCormick has already declared victory. There's been several publications that have picked him to win. It's kind of funny that the Decision Desk, which by the way is very aggressive in their calls, which I appreciate. And by the way, when it comes to like these publications calling states, a lot of it is they don't want to get it wrong. But I will say, I don't think CNN ever called a single state first on election night. It's just kind of interesting how that worked out. They didn't call a single one. Fox News was really aggressive towards the end, like when they called Pennsylvania and Alaska to give Trump the win, because I think they wanted to announce that he was the next president. They were the first major ones to do it. But they, Bob Casey he's not giving up, but Dave McCormick is going to win Pennsylvania. So Republicans are going to at least get one Rust Belt Senate race win. This is very disappointing with Mike Rogers losing by 0.4 in Michigan. 0.4. Hovde lost by less than a point. Now with basically all the votes counted, he lost by like 0.7. Very disappointing. You would love to get up to 54, 55 if you could. Nevada and Arizona, the Kari Lake situation. I mean, what did Trump end up winning Arizona by? 90% in. He's going to win it by around 6, possibly even like 6.2 depending. He ended up winning Nevada by around 3. Man, if you were to tell me Trump would have won Nevada by 3.1, I would probably say that Sam Brown would have like a 75% chance to win. And he ends up losing by over a point, it looks like. And listen, with Kari Lake, I had said if Trump had got to like a 4.5 to a 5 point margin, Kari Lake would probably win by a very slim margin, and it didn't even happen. So very disappointing in terms of those results. Obviously, Republicans, I don't know why this was at 81, 82% going into election night. It was always 95+%. There were liberals that were like, oh, Moreno. I'll tell you what, Moreno was, in terms of how he compared to Trump, not great. I mean, Trump won Ohio by 11.5. Moreno doesn't even carry it by 4. He's very lucky that Trump was able to extend the margin in Ohio and make it more conservative. We all knew that Rick Scott was going to win very easily. It's crazy that people, there were some polls there that had Rick Scott only up by 1 or 2. He ends up winning by 13. Basically the exact same margin as Trump. So he really didn't underperform him at all. Sheehy, boy, that was closer than I expected in Montana. They really like Tester. They really do. Sheehy ends up winning by over 7. It's a solid win. But I think Trump, what did Trump win that state by? Yeah, Trump ended up winning that state by 20, which doesn't surprise me because it was like a closer margin, like 16 points. I mean, if it was 16 like it was in 2020, maybe Tester would have had more of a chance there. And then looking at the House, this is what we're still waiting for. You can see right now, Decision Desk, I don't really think they're accurately grading the percentage here because it's really not moving much at all. They're saying it's an 80% chance. It's all but assured Republicans will take this once they finally call all of the races. I think the projection right now, now they only have Republicans at 220. Yesterday it was 222. It's going to be a very slim majority for Republicans, which is extremely disappointing. Normally with these House races, a lot of this is probably based off of gerrymandering because if you were to tell me that Trump would have won the popular vote by possibly 1.5 to 2, I would say it would be a very easy win in terms of the House. Maybe they're just not winning votes in the right districts, but you would like to see more than 220 to 215 if Trump is winning the popular vote by 1.5, because normally you're talking about the down ballot effect, and Trump's going to also get a lot of the House of Representative candidates over the finish line and the Republican representatives into those offices. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be closer. So really not an amazing performance down ballot, which doesn't really surprise me. This could potentially be a problem for Republicans in 2026 during the midterms. When Trump is not on the ballot, it could be an issue. Although, I don't know, man. There's going to be some enthusiasm with Trump. It's going to be different. The 2026 electoral map does not look terrible for Republicans. And right now, Trump will have the majority we would expect in the House and the Senate. And he also has the presidency with a popular vote victory, a very commanding win in every single swing state, with Pennsylvania being around 2 points. A very, very nice win there. I'm trying to see like these final vote counts. I think they're basically all in. Florida ends up being 13.1. Ohio, 93% in. It looks like it's going to be around 11.3, 11.4. Texas, we know, was a huge margin. The final vote's coming in there. It's going to be right around 14, 13.9. So there were some big wins for Donald Trump. Arizona's one of the crazier ones in terms of just how lopsided it ended up being around. We'll see what happens because 90%, and a lot of these are mail-in. Depending on where they're from, they might lean Harris and it'll get slightly closer. But Trump, at this point, will be winning the popular vote. And again, we're just waiting on California. You can see right now there's 12 million votes in, but only 72% counted. So once that number gets up, Trump's going to gain. We would expect another million and a half, get around 77 million at least when it comes to those results. So I would say at this point, down ballot, not the best, especially with Trump winning the way he did, how commanding it was. You could argue, well, he was running up margins in Texas. He was making states that Republicans weren't going to win more competitive, like in New York. And that's part of the way you win the popular vote. If you are a Republican, you have to make the margins where liberals run up the popular vote. You got to make them closer. And that's what Trump did in a New York. That's what Trump did in a New Jersey. That's what Trump did. He started running up margins in Florida, in Texas, in Ohio. That's the way you do it. You cut the margins a little bit in California. It's kind of funny where we already knew Trump had won the popular vote before California really even counted. We know California is Harris is winning just the state of California in terms of raw vote by 2.3 million, and Trump is still going to win the popular vote relatively easily. It is pretty crazy when it comes to that. Minnesota ends up honestly less than 5, like 4.5. Virginia ended up around 5. So those states, we'll see if they end up becoming swing states. You could argue New Jersey as well, depending on what happens there. Maine at large, it ends up being a 7-point win for Harris. In an election where everything turns to the right, and Maine at large is still a 7-point victory. That's not great. I think the second district in Nebraska, the second district in Nebraska was closer than I thought. I really thought it was going to be a bigger margin. So that district, the Omaha area, that's swinging more to the left. Liberals are moving in. And that's why Trump didn't win it, but he won it in 2016, lost it in 2020. Even though the country shifted right in 2024, he still ends up losing it. But I thought he was going to lose it by 6 or 7 points, not by around 3.5, like 3.7, which is what that margin is showing right there. What was the Maine second? A 9-point victory? Yeah, you'll take that if you're Trump. There were some liberals that were thinking the Maine second was potentially going to be in play for them. All these other districts were guaranteed to go to the candidate. There's no doubt about that. New Hampshire would be another one you would look at. And we could argue right now that New Hampshire going into 2028 is a pure swing state. The margin was less than 4, or actually right around 4 now with over 95% in. So a 4-point margin, you could argue with the amount of independents in New Hampshire, depending on who, likely J.D. Vance, although we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot to be decided before then. You could argue it could be a swing state. But these are just, looks like the final results. Although we're still waiting for votes out of California. I try and do an update on this every day because it's like they won't even call the House yet with how slow these vote counts are. And what happened in Alaska? Did Alaska finally get in? I want to see them still only 75% in. Trump is up by 15. We'd like Trump to stay up around 14, 15 in Alaska in terms of that. By the way, Trump also swung Hawaii pretty far. I know it doesn't look like it. This is a 23-point victory for Harris. But Trump did swing it to the right. Imagine Tulsi Gabbard being the VP. Hawaii is going to be a swing state in 2028. I'm only kidding, kind of. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.